That team out west may have just captured the biggest moment in their program's history.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Before we get into this program-defining win for Dan Lanning's Oregon Ducks, we got to take a trip back into the time machine. We got to rewind this tape a little bit back to February, when Dan Lanning said, "The grass is damn green in Eugene." That was the moment where the trajectory of Oregon football changed, where he said, "Thanks, but no thanks," to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and said, "I'm growing roots, some big old trees here in Eugene, Oregon." A moment like that in February is what leads to a moment like this in the middle of October. A huge win and a huge moment for this Oregon football team, and who knows just how high they can fly this year and in the future with those two moments as the building blocks to a new future and a new era of Oregon football to be one of the premier programs in all of college football. Before I get into my takeaways, I want to talk about those last drives of the game. 5 or 6 minutes left to go. Oregon is driving down the field. I felt really good about the Ducks and how they were managing the clock late in the game. I can't exactly say the same about Ohio State. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But when they got down and they weren't able to convert on 3rd and goal, knowing Dan Lanning's aggressiveness on 4th and goal, there was a little birdie in the back of my head saying, is he going to go for this? Now, of course, he made the right decision, and he kicked the field goal in that instance. Now, Ohio State had one timeout at that point in the game, and I said, I think Ohio State's going to drive down the field, and they're going to kick the field goal. Will Howard was playing too good. This Ohio State team was moving the football. We'll talk more about the absence of Jordan Burch here in a little bit. Will Howard had a lot of time to throw the football today, and I thought that was going to lead them to go down the field and being able to kick the field goal. But, of course, we know what happened. Offensive pass interference from the true freshman Jeremiah Smith put them back, and then just with 6 seconds to go, Will Howard scrambles, but the clock runs out and it hits zero. Pandemonium in Eugene, Oregon. What a heart-stopping finish to this game between the Oregon Ducks and the Ohio State Buckeyes. I thought Oregon's trenches held their own in this game. And when you don't have a guy like Jordan Burch on your defensive line, I think that's saying something about what the Ducks have up front. Mateo Uyunglele, I thought, stepped up pretty good in this game. You look at what he did, 5 tackles, 2 for loss, and a sack for Mateo coming off the edge. Now, Derek Harmon didn't put up the biggest numbers. You know, when you're a defensive lineman in general, you're not going to put up huge numbers, but I thought he did enough with hurries, with pressure, to be able to get Will Howard running around. You know, there were times where he maybe should have wrapped up Will Howard behind the line of scrimmage, didn't do that, but I thought Derek Harmon early in the game stepped up and played well, and I think throughout the game he was able to shed some blocks, get Will Howard moving around a little bit, and that causes things to maybe get to that second, those third, those fourth reads down the stretch if you're able to take Will Howard's concentration off of that first read that he wants to make in that as well. So it was a trench battle. I talked about that in my preview. A lot of people talked about it. These are the ultimate trenches, right, for offensive and defensive lines for both of these teams. I thought Oregon's defensive line stepped up in key situations. Is it going to be their best performance of the year? No, because you're taking on an awesome Ohio State offensive line and you didn't have your best player in Jordan Burch. But all of that being put together, I thought they did a decent job holding their own. You look at Ohio State and how they were able to run the ball pretty well early in this game. You look at their final tally, I think Oregon made some solid adjustments in defending that Ohio State run game because the Buckeyes were going at the absence. They were running off tackle. They were going after the absence of Jordan Burch and trying to attack that weakness. But Oregon did a good job, I think, as a whole, as a team, being able to adjust as this thing went along. Let's get into my takeaways. Both quarterbacks played extremely well. Both experienced transfer guys that transferred into their current schools, Ohio State and Oregon, to try to be those guys to be able to carry each one of these teams to a national championship. Let's start first with Dillon Gabriel. The way he played, the throws he was able to make on some of those explosive plays, more on the explosives here in just a minute. I think this type of performance, this type of moment, puts him into that Heisman conversation. The way he threw the football, kept on moving the Ducks, and kept on keeping them in the football game, because this run game at first with Jordan James wasn't maybe as effective. Now, they stuck with it. More on that here in just a minute. But when you're facing that Ohio State front, I think more pressure went on to Dillon Gabriel to make big plays, and he made some certainly down the stretch. Dillon, 23 of 34, 341 yards, and 2 touchdowns through the air as well. Will Howard, 28 of 35, 326, and 2 touchdowns. I think the absence of Jordan Burch, we talked about Ohio State how they tried to exploit that in the run game. They were successful at it early in this game. I think that Will Howard had a lot of time to throw, 1, because he's got a really, really good offensive line, and 2, because Oregon didn't have the ultimate disruptor in Jordan Burch being able to put pressure. I thought he was able to sit pretty comfortable back there in that pocket for most of the night, and he was able to deliver. When you have time, and when you're comfortable, and when you have these wide receivers, when you have Emeka Egbuka, when you have Jeremiah Smith making plays, that's going to be a combination of success. You're going to have a really efficient and a really effective day. I described this Ohio State team and this offense as efficient, and I thought they were tremendously efficient, both running the football and throwing the football, but very specifically throwing the football. Both of these quarterbacks, and I talked about in my preview, right? They've been turning the football over as of late, a goose egg for both of them. They both played tremendous games, and they both had those great moments to be able, that great quarterbacks need in these types of settings to be able to lead their team to a win. Oregon just made a couple more plays over the course of the game, and that's why they get the program-defining W in this one. But both quarterbacks were tremendous. Let's talk a little bit more about Dillon Gabriel, and of course, let's talk a little bit more about the winner. I talked about it in my preview. I thought it was going to come down to explosive plays. Oregon hit them in this game, and they hit them big. When you talk about those 30-plus yard plays, the Ducks hit them, and they hit them often in this game. And I think that they had to hit them because, as I mentioned early in the game, Jordan James really wasn't able to get a lot going in the run game, so more pressure went onto the shoulders of Dillon Gabriel to make plays over the top. Evan Stewart, 7 catches, 149 and a touchdown. He had a 69-yard grab. Tez Johnson, 7 catches, 75 and a touchdown. That was a 48-yard touchdown that he was able to haul in. Terrence Ferguson, a tight end, 4 catches, 62 yards. He had a 32-yard catch. Trayshawn Holden, we all know what happened with him. I'm sure he's going to be, Dan Lanning's probably going to have a nice chat with him here coming up tonight and Sunday, and as we get in early in the week here next week. Only 1 catch, but it was a 32-yard catch. Ohio State, their defense, their best part of their defense may be the secondary. I know they've got a really good defensive line, but that secondary is elite. All right? That's just the cold, hard truth about all of this. So what does it say about the Oregon Ducks and what they have on offense to be able to get open that consistently against that Ohio State secondary? Now, Denzel Burke, I don't think that he's certainly going to be a first-round draft pick or he's that elite level, like the Will Johnson type, maybe over at Michigan. But him, Davison Igbinosun, these are really good players. Oregon won't see likely a secondary this talented the remainder of the year. And that probably includes the college football playoff. So this is a huge confidence booster. We already know, unless you've been living under a rock, you knew that Oregon was extremely explosive on the outside, and that's what they needed to hit. That's what they needed to do to be able to win this game. But considering what's left on the schedule, Oregon has got to be feeling sky high about what's going on right now. They needed to hit the explosive plays. They did hit the explosive plays. That's the difference in the game. I think that's why we're talking about an Oregon Ducks signature marquee win over the Ohio State Buckeyes right now. Signature, marquee, statement, whatever word you want to use to describe it, it is that for the Oregon Ducks. A lot of people, now Dan Lanning, fairly young, right? This is what, his third year as head coach of the Oregon Ducks? Fairly young as a head coach. There was already kind of a talking point with him that says, well, Dan Lanning lost to Washington twice last year. Can't win the big game. He has that big win on his resume. Dan Lanning found a way to really get a signature marquee win. And I think this win is going to put Oregon into the rocket ship and blast them off into another stratosphere, certainly this season. They are staring 12-0 in the face. You look at the rest of the Oregon schedule, and this was going to always be their toughest challenge. And the way that maybe some of these other teams have shaped out the rest of the year, this is an Oregon team that is going to be playing against themselves the rest of the season. So when we get to late in November, when we get to Big Ten championship time, when we get to college football playoff time, this team is still getting better. This team is playing great, obviously, after a win against Ohio State. They're playing great. They're feeling great. But this is a team that needs to continue to raise that ceiling, because now, this win over Ohio State, you're getting everybody's best shot won, but now your expectations just took multiple steps up the ladder. Now you have national championship caliber expectations after beating a national championship caliber team like the Ohio State Buckeyes. I was happy the way that Oregon stuck with the run game, even though the throw game, as we said, explosive plays, it was certainly working well down the field. Jordan James in this one, 23 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. When we got to the second half, you saw Jordan James in those running games. It started to pay off a little bit, where it maybe wasn't working as well in the first half. It started a little bit, work a little bit better in that second half. Credit to the offensive line up front. Credit to Will Stein, certainly sticking with it and getting a little bit more balanced down the stretch in this one. That atmosphere at Autzen Stadium looked absolutely insane. If you were at that game, I want to hear from you. I love environments in college football. The stadiums and the fans, they're the best part about our sport. So if you were at the game, tell me all about it in the comments below. I want to hear all about it. It seemed like a fantastic atmosphere. Last thing. For Ohio State, you lost to one of the best teams in the country by 1 point. Now it's time. You're kind of in a similar situation like Oregon, where you look at the rest of the way. I don't think there's going to be a ton of teams that are going to challenge you. Now it's up to looking at what didn't work in this game. And that's, I think, looking at the secondary, right? And trying to limit those explosive plays. So when you take on an Oregon, when you take on a Texas, right, in the college football playoff, when you take on a team with a really good quarterback and a really good offense, you need to be able to contain those explosive plays down the field. And whatever else you pick apart from this game that you need to get better at. That's where Ohio State is. These are teams that are probably going to meet up again in the Big Ten championship game, all right? These are by far, I think, the best two teams in the Big Ten Conference right now. You know, Penn State is kind of creeping there. They're sitting there, I think, right in that 3 spot. But I think this game proved just how high of quality these two football teams are. For the Buckeyes, over these next 6 games to finish the rest of the season, you need to continue to look at this game and use this game as a measuring stick. So when you play Oregon again, or you play somebody bigger and badder in the college football playoff, this time you're able to come out with a victory. An absolutely epic college football game between the Oregon Ducks and the Ohio State Buckeyes. I want to hear all of your reactions in the comments below. Do you think Oregon is the national championship favorite as of right now? Or do you think maybe Texas is still just a notch above them? And what about the Ohio State Buckeyes? Where do you kind of stand on where they fit right now? They came up just short. Ohio State is still an elite team, but I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What a game, folks. This is why we love college football. I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.